Like, yes.
Do you really, Adam? Are you like, is that a toaster reference? Okay, he gets it.
So I'm glad that you get it. And I think
Yeah.
thinking of things that we get together is this concept that you've really codified and created an entire, I feel like, category around, which is zero click marketing. So I definitely want to get into that today so that we can
Mhm.
leave the audience away with some frameworks or some takeaways or some things that they can apply to their own companies. But before we do that, I want to do a little this or that. We did this with Brendan Hufford and had a lot of fun. And so now I'm going to do it all the time. So if you're ready to play, I'm ready to go.
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, cool. So this or that, educate the feed or entertain the feed?
Educate the feed.
Mm. Newsletter or podcast?
Podcast.
Ooh, okay. I love that. Uh, okay. Um, data-led strategy or like gut or instinct-led strategy?
Instinct-led strategy.
Oh, okay. This is so good. All right. I feel like this one I'm just like leading the horse to water kind of vibes, but I'm gonna ask it anyway. Personal brand or company brand?
Personal brand.
Yeah. Okay. All right, last one. Um, AI assisted content or fully human content?
Ooh, I might catch some strays for this one. I'm gonna say AI assisted content.
Mhm. Yep.
And we
Uh,
can double click into any of these and all of these. Yeah.
yeah, I think we might need to because,
Yeah.
I honestly I actually thinking about the double click into any of these,
Mhm.
let's anchor this into what zero click marketing is. I've obviously had a chance to listen to your podcast. People here today have probably listened to it or definitely follow your content, but for all of the sake of having continuity across the feeds and the ears, what is zero click marketing?
Okay. So I spoiler alert, I have been working on developmental edits for my book for Rand Fishkin's in my forthcoming book. Guess what it's gonna be about? But so I'm like really in this, but at the same time, my head is like everywhere in all of this. So today my explanation is gonna change. I will give kind of like a preview story to it. So this was like 4 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. This might have 4 years ago because it was kind of before Rand and I were even friends. 5 years ago. I'm sorry. 5 years ago.
It's fine. 5
Before
years.
Rand and I
Yep.
even knew each other. And I just, I followed him on Twitter because obviously I did. And this was also when Twitter was Twitter and not X, right?
Mhm, mhm.
So, and this was also when people actually talked about their expertise and their niche and their hobbies over on Twitter. So this is important to remember. And one day he tweeted something like, I feel like there is an area of marketing that involves, you find people's your audience's sources of influence. Like you figure out like which podcast they listen to, which YouTube channel they subscribe to, the social accounts they follow. And essentially what you do is like you do marketing there in those channels. And it's focused on meeting people where they are. And it's not so much campaign driven, or it's not like, um, paid ad focused. It's not SEO focused. It's just kind of going to where people are and marketing there. And what was interesting was a lot of people chimed in, and a lot of the comments were like, "Oh, yeah, this is influencer marketing." And he was like, "No, because influencer marketing means reaching out to influencers and having them talk about your product. And yeah, that can be helpful, but that's not one strategy. Like that's not really one thing a marketing team can do on their own unless they have tons and tons of money to just spend.
Mhm.
Like no, it's more about like going to the source of influence and like you're also the one posting about it. You're not dependent on someone else to talk about you. Somebody else was like, "Oh, isn't this just content marketing?" Rand was like, "Not really, because this also involves a focus in social media. Maybe at some point you will have to focus on ads." So it is kind of like it touches all the disciplines. And I was thinking about this tweet the other day, and I didn't respond to it then. And it's only connecting the dots going back. And I sent Rand a voice note and I was like, "Wait, I remember this tweet from 5 years ago. I think you were talking about zero click marketing."
Mm.
And he was like, yeah. He was like, yeah, that's why we're doing this book. I'm like, no, I know. I was just thinking about it. And at the time, Rand was calling it influence marketing, like
Mhm.
going to the source of influence, becoming influential, influencing your audience in all the different ways that they consume content. So that's kind of what zero click marketing is. And the reason we need it, and it is I won't monologue too long, but the reason we need it is because of the way the platforms have not even just enabled, but have kind of forced in platform behavior, right? Like
Mhm.
everyone knows now, like on the social media, on the socials, that you basically can't put a link, even if you physically can put a link, you basically can't, right? Because we all believe that like the algorithms will like crush your reach, or you can't do it, you'll get suppressed. And we've all kind of learned like, well, you have to find other ways to get scrappy and drive people to ultimately drive them to conversion, whatever that conversion, path looks like.
Yeah, I think, you correct me if I'm wrong in this framing, but really the way that I've started to understand this concept of zero click marketing is it's almost like how you behave online is the similar way that you would behave in real life. Like if
Yeah.
I wanted to build a relationship with somebody, like I would go to the events that they're going to. I would find
Yeah.
out like the stuff that they like to do. Like you would do all of those things naturally. And then I think just as marketers have marketed, we sort of lose the thing that we know to do innately, and
Mhm.
it's like you've kind of done this beautiful thing of cutting through the noise and just being like, yeah, that's called zero click marketing. So it's like, so that's how I have understood the framing. Um, and so I'm thinking about, we were playing this or that, and I said newsletter versus podcast. And you said podcast.
I did.
What's the zero click marketing for you when you think about podcast?
Oh, okay. So what's the zero click marketing for me in a podcast? So the way I'm approaching my podcast is I'm trying to give this standalone value in each episode where you don't have to subscribe and listen to each episode in order to understand it or get value. The idea is you listen to one and you go like, "Cool, got it. I'll come back," you know? But at the same time, I do want to differentiate from general B2B marketing, right? Like I do have a couple of interviews with friends and colleagues, but it's not a show about Amanda talking to people, right? It's a show about Amanda talking to people within the context of zero click marketing. So this week we dropped an episode with Brendan Hufford in which we talked about basically his career journey from being more SEO driven, more SEO focused to now essentially doing zero click marketing where he is more so focused on like organic growth opportunities for his clients. Yeah, some SEO is involved or can be involved. This is not a like he doesn't do SEO thing. It's just that he's not the SEO guy, you know? So we talked about that and we talked about like the ways we can kind of sell zero click marketing internally, like internally in your organization.
So let's go back. I mean, you said you had it kind of clicked for you of what Rand was talking about 5 years ago. We're fast
Mhm.
forward now to today. What about today's environment has shaped the necessity to really embrace zero click marketing?
One thing is, and this kind of scares me about the digital world today. Maybe this is tinfoil hat stuff, but I feel like, especially, so I think how I feel about AI, LLMs, Chat GPT and stuff, it's a little complicated because on one hand, I don't want to be the person who's like, oh yeah, let's go like all AI. Let's do like the AI marketing because I don't believe that should be a thing. But at the same time, I'm not going to say that, "Oh, this doesn't matter. It's just a bubble and it's gonna burst and, like, who cares?" Like, I don't know. Um, because a couple of realities are, um, market share of market share of AI tools when you compare them within the context of search, especially, is still very low. Like if you're looking at search tools as like, and now I think at this stage of like Google AI overviews and stuff, I think it's fair to kind of like see them as like a nebulous blob, like the AI and search because they're kind of there is overlap, especially in the way that people use these tools. I'm not saying it is one for one, it's not, but there is some overlap, right? But overall market share is relatively low. And then even then, when you look at the amount of visits to ChatGPT, what is it like? I don't know, the hundreds of millions. Only about half of those visitors do anything on ChatGPT, meaning like, or actually no, about half of them prompt or
Mm.
search or whatever, interact with the chat. So there are like half of people who are bouncing, right? For whatever reason. Maybe they checked on something they needed to see and they're done. Maybe they didn't know what to do. So I do think it's really important for marketers to keep in mind, like, sure, we do tend to be people who are like at the forefront of this stuff and early adopters, but is that actually where your audience is? Are they paying attention to these things? That's one thing. The other thing I'll say is kind of regardless of that, we are in this era where what people say about you, what third parties say about you is becoming more and more important for better or for worse. And there are going to be times when your customers, your audience learns about you through the words or language that you didn't even say. Right? They could be googling you. They could be reading an AI overview, but that AI overview might not even contain what your website says. So it is so kind of taking that broad view of it, it's really important to be thinking about, am I generally reaching people where they are? Am I speaking their language? Am I influencing them in some way? And I'm not talking like influencer, but I just mean influence in general. Like, and I think kind of an ironic thing with all this is now things like PR, really good content marketing, a good social strategy. These things are all really, really important because all these things provide the ways for third parties to talk about you.
Yeah, it's almost like we have less control of our own narratives. And
Yeah.
so it's like, how do we do that? I'm curious, you mentioned again, I was not building our entire conversation around this or that, but it's sort of happening very organically where I said company brand and personal brand, and you said
Mhm.
personal brand. So even in the framing of what you're talking about there, of like, you can't always control people are saying about your company brand or whatever. Like, why did you put more value on the personal brand today?
I think it's what it really just kind of comes down to is that people would just rather follow other people, not companies. Like they just they just don't want to. And it doesn't mean that they don't care about your company. It's just that like when you're scrolling in your feed, you don't really want to see companies talking. Like,
Yeah.
like, sure, there might be like the Wendy's of social media where you're like, oh, I love it. But I don't know. I mean, my skepticism there. Okay, I'm just gonna say something very biased and personal, which is fine. This is my opinion. Personally, like I don't actually follow any of those, like the Wendy's and whatever accounts, and I have nothing against them. It's just I'm not going to social media to look for McDonald's talking to Burger King. Like, I don't care. Like if something goes viral and I happen to see it because other people are talking about it, sure, I'll check it out. But I don't want that. And maybe the bias here is like, I just don't really, I can't really strongly imagine marketing to someone who like deeply cares about that. And this is because I market to other marketers, right? I can't really imagine marketing to a person who's like, "No, I need to see the Wendy's tweet of the day I need it." I'd be like, "What? Why? Like, what's
Yeah.
going on?"
Well, and to your point, kind of going full circle of like how you were even talking about zero click marketing and things like that. It's like literally where you're at. So if Wendy's is not relevant to you or McDonald's or whatever, it's like why would you invest your time and energy there? The only time you're learning about it is because it's getting bubbled up in your community. And so then it
Yeah.
forces you to pay attention. So you're kind of living proof of the framework that you're even talking about. I'm curious, leaning into the personal brand versus company brand a little bit further,
Mhm.
one of the fears that we hear a lot of people say from a company perspective is that when they think about investing in their employees and their personal brand or like giving them an opportunity to get on the mic or whatever, sometimes there's this tension between, well, what will they say?
Yeah.
Or will they become an influencer and then want to quit? Like, what do you say to some of that mentality?
I would say, well, one, I do think it's really important to have some kind of guardrails for your employees. So it doesn't have to be anything I mean, it shouldn't be anything super prescriptive, but, I think you could have certain approved language, and just by let's language like, "Oh, here's how you wanna refer to our products." Like, let's make sure this is just an example because I used to work at Fitbit. It's not a
Mm,
big deal, but, like, for instance, most people would say, like, "Oh, I love my Fitbit," or like, "Oh, I don't even know the devices now. I have the Charge, I love my Charge." And that's great. But, like, we as Fitbit would say Fitbit tracker, Fitbit device. So that was just like a thing that we had. That was just how we spoke. So you could have that type of terminology, for your employees. Um, you could have some certain rules or expectations of like, hey, by the way, we have some like big news dropping tomorrow. Please don't post about it. Like we have an exclusive with the New York Times. They are going to break the news after 9 a.m. Pacific time. You can post about it. Like you do
mm,
need to set some of that stuff up. And then as far as, like companies worrying about like what if they quit? I mean, one, like it's not nearly impossible, but I mean, it's just gonna be like the top 1% or even smaller than that, top 1% of influencers who would be able to quit their day job and do the influencing full time. It's really hard to do, and it's really
mhm.
hard to do in a way that makes meaningful income. So I think the one thing is like it's not that. I mean, it can be very lucrative. I'm not saying it's not ever. It's just that like realistically speaking, and I think anybody here who you probably know, like, it's not like you get one viral LinkedIn post and you go, "Oh, sick, I can make, like, 20K a month just from this." Like, no, you probably can't. Like, you could probably get to that point, sure, but it's probably not gonna happen very quickly, and it's not gonna happen by happenstance, you know?
Yeah. Well, and half the time, I don't think people necessarily even want that job anyway. They just
Yeah,
think they do.
yeah.
But I'm curious because I mean, you've had a really interesting journey, and I think it aligns again really nicely to what we asked on the this or that, where I said educate or entertain. You said
Mhm,
educate. What's interesting about that from your own history, and you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but you went from like what, like 1,000 followers to 100,000 followers
mhm.
without any like paid media, no like crazy, but you did that by just like educating, by just like delivering the punchline and not gating it, not hiding it, not like burying it. Like, tell me why that's still such a relevant strategy today.
Yeah, I feel like when people are just starting out or they don't really know, like, where to go yet, I feel like people kind of assume, "Oh, I have to be entertaining or I have to be funny," or like, "Oh, like, nobody wants to learn, they just wanna get entertained," and I don't think that's true. I think people do want to be educated. Obviously, people wanna be entertained too, but, I mean, people do want to be educated, but they don't wanna be bored, right? And you don't have to be entertaining to be educational. It's You have to see your audience, right? And I
Mm.
see a comment here in the chat from Adam saying like it's hard for me to wrap around this for me to wrap my head around this because it feels a little bit backwards to not want clicks. So does zero click marketing basically mean we're choosing to be helpful instead of trying to get traffic? So this is a good opportunity for me to provide some education, and that's a really important distinction here. So what I hope Adam's still here. Adam, like put like an emoji or like something so I know like there's like a floating reaction here. Um, or say something in the chat. I think it's really important to debunk this because it's when I say zero click marketing, I'm not saying don't try to get people to click ever or don't
Mm,
worry about clicks. What I am saying is that these platforms, social media, even Google, they are trying to keep users in their platforms. So if you are trying to push people off platform, you are already starting at a disadvantage, right? Because we know again that a lot of the social networks they do penalize you for dropping links, right? So if you're thinking, oh yeah, but if I don't put a link, no one's gonna click, right? How am I gonna get them to click? The idea is to deliver so much value directly in the feed so that when people are ready to click, they will do so and they'll know where to go. So that's one piece of it, right? So it's platforms hoarding traffic. The other thing I'll say, and I'll push back on this a little bit, is even if you do get the click, there's a good chance you're not going to see it because of the problem of dark social. So you could look up this research, Adam. You could look this up. SparkToro Dark Social Study. We have something. I think it's from 2024, but we did this analysis of like we tested over 1,000 different websites to check the referral traffic, and we found referral strings being removed so that essentially these these referral clicks were getting marked as direct. So for instance, even if you got a link through TikTok, like your favorite TikTok creator, and you clicked on it, they're going to see direct, or they would see direct traffic, meaning they're not going to have any idea that you came from TikTok.
Yeah.
And this happens a percentage of the time in things like LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. It might be like 10, 15%, but still you're going to, if you're dependent on looking at your Google Analytics and seeing direct referral, whatever, you're going to be absolutely undercounting the impact of social media. So that's the other thing I'll say. And then finally, the third thing I'll say is don't think about it again as not wanting clicks. Think about it as not being so click dependent, and think about how you can be strategic when driving the click. So I like to talk about this thing called algorithmic capital, or like kind of an algorithmic bank. So what you do is you accrue this sort of algorithmic capital by posting zero click content in your social feeds, right? So like educational standalone value. Maybe you are I want to get outside of beauty marketing. Maybe you are like a bird enthusiast and you love talking about birds, and you also sell a bird feeder. I don't know. Let's go with it.
Yeah, it's great.
And so maybe some of your posts would be like, "Hey, did you see that unusual bird in your neighborhood? Did it look like this?" Well, turns out there's a really rare kind of species of bird, or like relatively rare. It looks like this. Here's how you'll know it. Here's what it sounds like. So next time you see it, like, it's called this type of bird, right? Like that would be a version of standalone value where someone could come across that, the right person, a bird enthusiast, to be like, "Oh, cool." But it makes sense in that format. It's likely to get some good engagement because it's not taking people off platform. It gives a value right there. Do a couple of those, kind of stack that engagement, build up that algorithmic capital, or build up your algorithmic balance. And then every now and then, and it doesn't have to be super exact, every 5, 6 posts or so, I don't know, then you drop a link. After you have these like 5 cute, educational, fun posts about birds, your 5th post can be like, "By the way, I actually sell these really cool bird feeders. You can buy them here." And then you could do that, right? Because by that time, you've kind of primed the algorithm enough where it knows to serve your content to the audience. And then people might click on that. So then you go back to your zero click content, standalone value in the post, right? So it's being just more strategic about how you drive people to your site.
Well, and it's kinda like you earn the right to make the plug is what
Mhm.
I is how I interpret that too, and, I mean, I think we've seen that be true over the course of all of the years that we've been in the social marketing game, you know what I mean, since the early 2000s and beyond, and I think the tension that I feel is still getting the buy-in from
Mhm.
stakeholders, and not necessarily in creating content, but more in, like, empowering people to create content on behalf of the brand, or
Mhm.
enabling them to, or even doing what you talked about where you're like, we are giving you guardrails so that you can be free, and helping generate opportunities honestly for the company, and earn more of the opportunity to make the plugs, make the asks. So I'm curious, when you think about, that nuance, or that dance rather, between data and instinct.
Mhm.
Like, what do you tell people on how to actually talk about the data to get the buy-in to go create the, we'll call it, fun content, or the
Yeah.
value-led content that doesn't always have a one-to-one impact?
Yeah. So when I say instinct driven marketing or whatever strategy, what I'm also referring to there is, when you do something long enough, whether it's a hobby or whether it's your job, right? You do something long enough, you hone the right instincts, right?
Mhm.
Like at this point, Rachel, like if you hear a podcast, like like, oh, that podcast sucks, or this one's really
Yeah,
good, and
yeah.
you will even know, right? You'll know like, oh, this is really good. It's not for me, but this is really good, and you already know, and you don't need to have the data that backs up, like, "Actually, I know this is good based on how many insights you said per second," right? You'd be like, "No, I know this is good because this is what I do. I run shows. I produce shows. I know a bad show from a good one." So, that's my way of saying, like, you need the reps, the experience, and throughout your career or whatever life, you need some of that data to inform your instincts over time. So, that's one. But I guess I would also say, like, getting the data to, like, get to use that as permission to do what you want. You could I mean, you could even do things like there are so many different ways of going about this. Like, one, I'm gonna say, shameless plug, you can go to Sparktoro and use our tool. We have always free accounts. This is where I don't feel bad about plugging us. We have an always free account. You get 5 free reports each month, and you can look at, like, okay, what are the search and AI tools my audience actually uses? What social networks do they use more than the average person? So you're gonna find things out like, oh, my audience actually, they're really on Instagram a lot. So we should probably use Instagram more for, like, the way we target our audience. Like, great, that makes total sense. You can even now see, like, the search their AI prompts and their Google searches. So you can get a sense of,
Mm.
like, what are the things my audience is talking about with ChatGPT? So that gives you a sense of, like, here's what my audience is doing, what they're talking about, where they are. And you can tell your CEO, whoever, like, well, this data from Sparktoro comes from a mix of clickstream data, so like actual user data, but aggregate and anonymized. Clickstream data, search data, and social media data, right? So it's a mix of that. You could show that. You could also executives say they like data, but that's only half the story. They also, and this applies to anybody, they also like their interests or their biases being reinforced. So there's a good chance your executive is like, "Oh, should we care about we need to figure out an AI marketing strategy. Like, how do we make sure that we get mentioned by ChatGPT?" Well, you can do that by focusing on your sources of influence, focusing on the people and the entities who talk about you and help shape that perception of you so that when your audience, when your user is prompting ChatGPT with behaviors related to your company, then you'll come up because you're providing the web with all these signals about you. So that's what I'm going to say. Like, actually, if you're going to use that as a data point, this is actually pointing to more important than ever. You need a really good content marketing, PR, brand, creator marketing strategy because otherwise, you're not going to be providing the web the signals that people are talking about you.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's about being relevant and staying relevant, and you have to be operating
Yeah.
all of those things, which is why it's really hard to be a marketer. And so one of the things I'm curious about specifically as we talk about AI and really channels, is LinkedIn. And so
Mhm.
LinkedIn is where we are, and it's where a lot of us play.
Mhm.
It's where we find people, it's where we connect, it's where we do business. And there's new data that I'm sure you're very familiar with that LinkedIn is now like the top cited domain for AI. And
Mhm.
so and the interesting thing about that is it's not necessarily like profiles, it's actually like what people are posting. And so it's like it is finding that information. And so I'm curious, like when you're thinking about where brand authority lives, it goes back to this idea of company brand versus personal brand. And it's the personal brand that is now actually driving the outcomes for search in the AI world. So how do you think about that? How are you approaching it? Yeah,
That's a good
I'll shut up.
question. No, that's a really good question. I haven't thought very deeply about this because I feel like I have a bunch of different opinions from different sides of myself. Like as a creator, what I'll say is now what we say, I won't even say creator. I'll say as a person who posts on LinkedIn because you don't have to
Yeah.
self-identify as a creator if you post things on LinkedIn. One is, now what we say about brands matters more than ever because it's getting crawled by the robots, right? I mean, maybe I'm going to regret saying that because I hope people will use these powers for good, right? But if you're a creator, arguably that gives you leverage as you close some creator sponsorship deals. You can say like, my stuff gets picked up by ChatGPT or by the AI overview pretty often. So, hi, you want to, you probably want to give me more money. So that's one piece. If you're a marketer who wants to get these mentions, then you can start thinking about like, oh, can I find people who are creating really good content on LinkedIn? And you could even, I think there are some lightweight ways of doing this where you can even just try for yourself, like Googling things related to your product and see if
Mhm.
people are talking about those pain points or behaviors or those problems that you solve on LinkedIn. And then you could think about like, oh, how can I show up there? Or maybe it's even, how can I help this person? Because this person talked about this problem. They're probably in my target audience. Maybe I need to reach out to them. So like it'll help you think more holistically about that. And it might even help you think about how you use more of your audience's language to do better marketing. Yeah, I think that's my
Yeah.
stance there.
No, I don't think there's anything that I would pick apart, honestly. I think
Mm,
the only thing I would add to that is, um, and sometimes I sit in my seat and we're a content, growth agency essentially. We do like
mhm.
production obviously, but um I sit in the seat sometimes and I question whether or not we should invest as much as we invest into creating our own content because of the issues that we're talking about. That being said, it's interesting to me because immediately my instinct is I just need more of my team creating content. I need more
Yeah,
video from them. I need them to have a sharper perspective. I need them to be in the space where our people are, in the
yeah.
proximity, so that they can actually engage and have a thoughtful view. And so I take that data and I kind of look at it through the lens of how do I equip my team to be the people that are being sourced and found
Mhm.
online to be authorities and the thing that we do best. So that's like where my brain
Yeah,
immediately goes. And
totally.
it's so in line with how you're talking about zero click marketing and how you, in order to play, you got to show up very consistently. And
Mhm.
so I just think it's interesting how the data is slowly starting to back up the instincts that you've had.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. How the data backing up the instincts. One thing I wanna add to that too is, like, I feel like if like, when anyone all we all think, like, "I don't know if I should post that thing." Everybody
Yeah.
knows that. We all get in our heads about that, but I will still say, like, I mean, I get a lot of people asking me like, "Hey, do you know a company or a person or a freelancer that can do this thing?" And almost always my answer is no. Even though I
Mm,
know a lot of really talented, awesome people, I know of really great creators, people with huge audiences. I'm like, do I know anyone? And this is a perfect example of what you do at Share Your Genius. Like for a long time, I was like, is there a podcast agency that will handle some of my work or, who I can hire to edit some video, but like they're not going to try to upsell me on this like insane package where I have to commit to like 12 videos a month. Right. Cause I had worked with agencies who want or tried to who wanted that,
yeah.
and I understand. Like I'm
Yeah.
not knocking them. It's just I'm not the fit. So I'd really struggled. Like I'm like, I know that there's gotta be someone for me. Like, I'm not asking for, like, someone to stare at my face in video edits for 30 hours a week. That's not the job for this. So, I eventually found you all through word of mouth, funny enough, but that does have me thinking, like, there's opportunity to create content for, okay, you're starting a podcast. This is what you should do to edit your show today by yourself. Like, let's say you're starting a podcast, you've never done this before, you don't know what a wave file is. I don't know what it is. I kinda do, but not really. Like, all
You
right,
don't need to know. You're working with
right.
us.
But also, like, somebody who doesn't know what a wave file is and also has no money is not really your ideal customer. They're
Right.
probably in your audience, and maybe they can grow their show or their business to a level where one day they'll hire you. But if you give them the tools of, "Okay, look, if I had no budget, this is what I would
Mhm.
do." And then when they do grow their show, their business, then they'll know, like, "I can hire Share Your Genius because they've already taken me this far for free." You know?
Yeah, no, I think it's a perfect analogy, and I think it's fully in line with this idea of we don't need to hide our expertise, we need to share it. And it's either like to your point, people are either for you or they'll be for you one day if you're doing what you need to do. I know we're a little over on what we promised people, so I want to kind of wrap up our conversation a little bit, and ultimately, I want to ask you if people are going to take one thing away and they have to prioritize so many things, and prioritize is even a funny word to even use when we're talking about priority. But if you had to leave people with one thing that they needed to start doing, what would it be? Or stop doing? Start or
Ooh.
stop doing?
Ooh. I'm going to say you need to do zero-click marketing today. You don't need to ask for permission. One way you can do it is set a 60-day sprint for yourself. That is going to be 8 weeks, right? About 2 months, 60 days. Pick a channel or pick a platform. Figure out like a content strategy. Like what is the one problem you are going to help your audience solve in the next 60 days? And then find the other people in your ecosystem who are talking about similar problems, engage with them, right? Go all in on this channel for 60 days. Track success by like look at likes, look at impressions, look at the conversations generated. And then at the end of the 60 days, take it to your boss, your team, whatever, and say, look, I think we're making headway here because, and you could even say like average impressions for an account of my size on LinkedIn is probably like 1,000. I have
Mm,
generated twice that. Like,
yep.
I think there are ways to talk about this, and then also just hey, all throughout all this content creation, I have an idea now. We need to create a playbook for how to solve this problem. Oh, we should work with this one customer on a case study. Let's do a webinar with them, right? Because I promise you, if you focus for 60 days on a well-defined, pretty narrow topic, you are going to find other content opportunities that will make your overall idea more sustainable over time.
Yeah, and as we wrap up, I'll give two shameless plugs. One is if you want to understand zero click marketing more, you should definitely subscribe and listen to your podcast, Zero Click Marketing. And then if you believe in, Amanda, what you just said in terms of like running at something for 60 days, well, we can make it 90. And at Sherry Genius, we have what we call a thought leadership engine process and program for our clients, and it's literally you record in 90 minutes and we give you 90 days worth of content. So if you want to run at something and talk about it with video, leveraging LinkedIn and the way that we're talking about it, feel free to reach out to us and do that. And
Ooh.
we can pause the stream and keep hanging out. But I think this was a ton
Yeah.
of value. Thank
Yeah,
you for
that's
sharing.
cooler than what I said. That 90 days. That's do that.
90 days.
Don't do my idea. Do Rachel's thing.
We'll just take